In the summer of 1969, Neil Armstrong took a walk, and for many, the Cold War space race switched off right there. The stiff, wire-framed American flag and the crisp boot prints in the lunar dust served as the evidence. To the United States, these images signaled the defeat of the Soviet space machine. During this era, Americans imagined the USSR's program as a faceless, machine-age monolith, an apparatus of conformity, sometimes called the integral. With the success of Apollo 11, that monolith appeared vanquished. This tidy victory created a psychological blind spot. While the United States scaled back its ambitions, the rival program across the ocean continued its work. In October 1969, barely 3 months after Apollo 11, high-ranking Soviet cosmonauts arrived in Anaheim, California to tour Disneyland. This is cosmonaut Georgy Beregovoy. He is a twice-anointed hero of the Soviet Union, wearing heavy military medals and a stern expression while standing in a temple to American consumerism. The U.S. was entering a period of budget cuts and internal soul-searching. Meanwhile, behind a thick wall of state secrecy, the Soviets rapidly pivoted their resources to dominate low Earth orbit. Without verifiable data on what the USSR was actually building, the space race turned into a competition of imagination and paranoia. Penetrating that Soviet secrecy required a specialized group of analysts known as cosmo-Kremlinologists. Their work was a form of high-stakes detective work. They scraped together tiny fragments of radar tracking data and parsed through dense Soviet state propaganda to guess at the Kremlin's actual reach. This massive rocket on the launch pad is the N-1. Experts didn't know the Soviets hit a severe internal crisis. Test after test ended in catastrophic, secret explosions. Hiding these failures projected a curated facade of frenzied determination. Because the physical failures remained invisible, Americans filled the void with the Shadow program, an imagined Soviet threat operating in the dark. This diagram shows how the Shadow program took shape. Without hard facts, the void of actual Soviet space plans filled with CIA estimates, media rumors, and political paranoia. As the 1970s progressed, speculation overwhelmed verified data points. That anxiety spiked between 1975 and 1981. During this 6-year hiatus, the American Astronaut Corps sat on the ground, waiting on the development of the space shuttle. While the U.S. remained grounded, the Soviets successfully established permanent orbital outposts, the Salyut space stations. To American observers, the Shadow program finally seemed to be materializing. The USSR appeared to be drawing a cosmic iron curtain over the planet. This is Ronald Reagan, whose administration used the fear of orbital dominance to justify the multi-billion-dollar Strategic Defense Initiative, popularly known as Star Wars. But that same projection worked in reverse. Peace activists and American scientists looked at the same image of Soviet capability and used it to propose cooperative missions like Mars Together. These advocates argued that a joint mission to another planet would force an end to the Cold War on Earth. The Soviet space program had become a Rorschach test for American politics. Both hawks and doves looked at the same shadowy program and projected their own visions of the future onto it. That shadow only dispelled with the collapse of the USSR. As Mikhail Gorbachev's glasnost policies took hold, the archives opened, revealing the internal duplication and budget fights that had plagued the program for decades. This docking interface represents the moment the imagined rivalry gave way to a physical partnership. The hardware of both nations finally met in orbit, laying the groundwork for the International Space Station. For a quarter century after Apollo, the pursuit of the stars followed the movements of an imaginary ghost of Soviet perfection. When we look into the dark of the cosmos, the future we see is a projection of our own earthly fears and deepest hopes.